Howdy y'all, Joe Hills here, recording as I always do in Nashville, Tennessee, and I was just admiring my newly rearranged record collection when I thought to myself, you know, this is a nice relaxing room, but really, having a comfortable music listening space, having a beautiful theater, that's not what this place is about. This place is about the imminent danger that the Hermitcraft is under. Our sick burn ward is ready, but we don't actually have a war room yet. I mean, we have a vault that's literally an empty chest that is not full of anything yet. Our vault is worthless. So here's what I'm thinking. I've started digging this stairwell down here, and we'll set up a place to actually store our musical weapons of mass, deception? They'll be something. They'll be interesting. But we don't have a place for them yet. So I'm gonna hide them down here. Right now, all of our weapons are air. They're the space between the lines. They're the pace between the rhymes, or at least the kind of beat between the times. But what we need to do is create the true war room that will carry us through an actual danger scenario and our test scenarios. Because, if we don't have something that can carry us through test scenarios, how are we going to do well in a real-life problem, That's just no good. So I figure I'll just kind of mine out some of the ceiling here, kind of give this space a little bit more of an open feel. Because, when you're under duress and under pressure, you don't want to have to measure your head against the sky. You want to hold it up high. And with those dreams, I believe we can fly. So what do we actually need to get this set up? I was going to say signs. We need signs so that we can write down our rough process. So, step 0, develop a process. Done. Okay, so that's where we are right now. We know that we are going to have some sort of scenario evaluation step. Step 1, evaluate musical threat. We're going to need a place or some sort of defined space to evaluate the musical threat as it arises or arrives. Exclamation point. Done. Okay, so, step 1. How are we going to evaluate musical threats? We are going to need a threat board. Where is a good place for a threat board? What I was thinking, can you place item frames on glass? Oh, you can. Okay, because I was thinking if we actually put the item frames on glass, that would be really cool. Now, we are going to need to actually kind of construct some of the pieces that we need for this as we go. So I don't know if you've ever created a crafting bench in Minecraft. We're going to skip that step today, though, assuming that you have. We are going to go ahead and start placing some of our construction equipment shulker boxes just kind of in this general area that we might yet remove the tools we will need to be successful, like these signs. Okay? Here we go. We've got 4 item frames. That's not enough in the long term, but it'll hold us over. And we're going to set up a sign here. This will be threat board. Dun, dun. Dunder Mifflin. No, just dun, dun, dun. So now that we have a threat board that we can use to evaluate and break down incoming threats, how will we know that a threat has indeed come in? I present my beta-tested note block warn-in alert system. It's just got a super simple clock in there. If I press that, it'll activate a little clock to go around there. And this little warning chime will go off. I've been trying it with a few different blocks underneath it to see what it sounds like. Yeah, I don't know. I think the ice block was kind of a better chime. We might actually have to set up an entire area at some point with one of each note block so we can experiment. But we don't want to have that thing running the whole episode, so I'm just going to hit this override switch that I had put in here. That'll freeze the whole thing up. It won't be able to turn back on until I actually go through. But, at that point, theoretically, if there was an actual threat incoming, we could just touch this. Oh, no! Pokemon George Strait! Okay, let's see what this threat looks like. Well, on the surface, it looks like a stick. But if we evaluate that stick, it appears that Joe Hills was attending a Pokemon Go event at the Parthenon in Centennial Park in Nashville, Tennessee, when he ran into George Strait, the author of the song, or the songwriter of the song. All my exes live in Texas. And having walked plumb head first into this fellow, George Strait was like, do you know who I am? I wrote All My Exes Live in Texas. And I was just like, well, I could write a geographically based humorous song just as easily, and my Pokemon are better than yours. And he did not believe me. And so now it is indeed on. Okay, so we got to break this down. Boom. Threat allocated. So, what do we know about George Strait's All My Exes Live in Texas? It is a song that depends on wordplay based on city names in Texas. Okay? That's real simple. You can just put that right there. Boom. Now, for our song, we might not want to limit ourselves to Texas, but we need to break down what the actual fundamental threat is in order to kind of figure out what our response will be. Now, this song is a country music song, and it follows a rough kind of narrative format about where the guy lists all the women that he's dated and what cities that they're from, and all of their names rhyme with the names of cities. So we need to go specifically for city name based rhyme scheme in whatever we generate. So we've got not only wordplay, but also a rhyme scheme there. And we also have a theme. Because this run-in occurred play in Pokemon Go, we need to evaluate how we can incorporate Pokemon into our rhymes. So let's just say Pokemon names? Or Pokemon concepts. Maybe we don't want to limit ourselves just to the names of Pokemon, right? You know, like I could come in and be like, all my Feebas live in Texas. But that's not really where we want to go with this. We want to take this one step further. So, let's think about this. What other songs have wordplay based on city names? Well, if we look at Tom Lehrer, who was a mathematician at MIT who wrote a bunch of comedy songs that later went on to be an inspiration to Weird Al Yankovic, one of his songs was called Hanukkah in Santa Monica. And throughout the song, he basically lists all these different Jewish holidays and talks about which cities he would celebrate them in, and they all rhyme, basically. Like, well, I'm not going to rip off all his things and just tell you all the funny rhymes. The rhymes are the jokes. Go listen to his song. But yeah, it's called Hanukkah in Santa Monica. You can find it on the internet. Anyway, so we might want something like that kind of incorporates that same core concept. Something about experience in Pokemon, except with a different kind of play on it than just saying, like, stuff from Texas. So as we zoom out, evaluating this in a larger constellation of songs with geography-based rhymes, it strikes me that perhaps we want to pursue our Pokemon Master Destiny. And Destiny rhymes with Tennessee. And that sounds like a lead. So, we need to evaluate as well Pokemon-based songs, okay? So, what Pokemon songs are out there? There's the Pokemon Rap, which lists all the Pokemon. So if we could list all the Pokemon, that would be a good start. But maybe we can't fit 151 Pokemon or more into our song. So, but let's think, what resources do we need to accomplish that? We need a list of all Generation 1 Pokemon. Possibly Generation 2 through 8, but Generation 1 is where the best humor is going to be, that's the most accessible to the broadest audience. So we want to hit that hard. 2, what other songs about Pokemon are there? Well, there is the opening theme song to the cartoon. Now, that one starts off with some lyrics. If I'm doing it off the top of my head, I wanna be the very best, like no one ever was. To catch them is my real test, to train them is my cause. I will travel across the land, searching far and wide, for Pokemon to understand the power that's inside. Pokemon, gotta catch 'em all, blah, blah, blah. They go on for a while. But, so, when we think about that, like, that is not a country song. It's kind of an inspirational prog rock ballad, almost. It's adjacent where we want to be. But if we want to immediately make sure that we hit home with this, we need to establish this is a Pokemon song from the first line. Now, some of you guys might be like, Joe, Wait, didn't you just sing the opening lyrics to, like, a copyrighted song? Well, for one thing, this was an excerpt for educational purposes, so we have a fair use case there. Also, the YouTube, like, music detector thing is based on pitch, and if I'm singing this far off key, it's not going to be able to tell what I'm doing. So, I'm not too worried. Okay, so, what have we got? We've got the concept of destiny, we've got the concept of geography. So I say my geography is in Tennessee, maybe my destiny is in Tennessee, my Pokemon journey is in Tennessee. So let's back up a little bit. Let's take this and condemn it. Let's condemn the concept of the solo Pokemon master. Because Pokemon Go isn't, you know, you can't be the very best like no one's ever was. Like, it's you and 100,000 or 1,000,000, or I don't know how many people play the game, but a whole bunch of other people are all playing Pokemon Go simultaneously all around the world. All around the world. So, when we think about it, Pokemon Go, in Pokemon Gorge Strait, I can't spell, that is going to be one of those things where we have to evaluate, like, okay, let's go back to his song, All My Exes Live in Texas. That is a very self-centered song. And so we have this idea of the solo Pokemon master from the Pokemon theme song that is also in conflict with the Pokemon Go identity of a player. You know, you're part of a bigger ecosystem with your friends. So, let's say that we take the theme song from Pokemon and we turn it into a little bit of a country ballad, but we turn it on its side, okay? So instead of, I want to be the very best, let's say that folks say to be the very best. You know, now, that seems good, because we're being like, this is hearsay at this point. This is not fact. But, I realize folks say to be the very best like no one ever was. Well, the way that the original lyrics are written, that doesn't fit into a country ballad format. So that makes me think, maybe folks say to be the oh no, I'm singing it like the Pokemon song. That's wrong. I gotta sing this like a country ballad. We gotta keep the George straight in Pokemon George straight, okay? So, folks say to be the very best, you gotta travel across the land. But I'm happy here at Pretty Good, just out walking with my friends. So you can fly from coast to coast for all Niantic's events. But my destiny's in Tennessee, my Pokédex in hand. Okay, so we have a fundamental hook, not a musical hook, but a narrative hook here. We have the idea that the speaker is kind of your barstool wise man, and he's saying to the brash-ash young fella, hey, you want to go be the very best like no one ever was? You want to fly around the world playing Pokemon Go? You're playing it wrong, okay? George Strait, I wouldn't have bumped into you playing Pokemon Go if you hadn't flown out here, because, you know, you're from Texas. So, in this scenario, George Strait is this guy who's flying all over the world to play Pokemon Go, and I'm just walking around a park in my city, you know? He's taking it too far, and I'm trying to tell him, take it where it needs to be, right? So, you know, I kind of thought about this, and from this point, we go back to the idea of having that city-based rhyme scheme. I actually pulled an entire list of all the Pokemon, and I created a list of all the cities in Tennessee that I thought had good names and were generally recognizable. Now, this is one of those steps that, you know, I did off camera because this would take way too long. You don't want to watch me going through Wikipedia on the list of municipalities in Tennessee with my list of Pokemon next to it going, okay, well, there's a Victory Bell, and there's a Bell Buckle, and there's a Weeping Bell, and there's a Bell Mead. You know, nobody wants that. And then I was like, well, if I'm supposed to be condemning his globetrotting, then I also need a list of every other city and Pokemon in those cities. And so it kind of gets a little bit out of hand, you know, at that point, because I'm just like, okay, so, what rhymes with Fargo? Okay, there's Ho-Oh. I actually have the list, but I left it in my car. But there's a whole bunch of like Pokemon that could rhyme with this. Like Steelix could rhyme with Phoenix if you wanted to push it. Onix could rhyme with Pheonix. And when I started thinking about things like Onix could rhyme with Pheonix, I realized also a lot of these Pokemon names in the list kind of almost rhyme with things, right? So, you know, it's like, well, I could have a slant rhyme where I either slightly mangle the name of the Pokemon or slightly mangle the name of the city. So that got me thinking, okay, Hooked on Pheonix worked for me. What I'll do is on the city names that are out of town or outside of Tennessee, what I'll do is I'll mangle those names to get them to rhyme. But on the things inside of Tennessee, I'll say the names of because I'm proud of Tennessee geography, I'll keep the names of the Tennessee locations accurate, but I'll slant the Pokemon names to rhyme with them, right? So, here we go. So then I started looking down my city list. This lets us narrow our city list at this point because, you know, I started off with this huge list of all these major cities in the United States or all over the world, and I was like, okay, I'm just going to go for the cities that have names that people pronounce differently locally, or the ones that they complain that people mispronounce, right? So then I was like, well, people are always saying, like, New Orleans. Like, they get upset if you say New Orleans. But, like, most people from outside of New Orleans are going to say New Orleans. So I was like, okay, what rhymes with New Orleans? You go, okay, well, what if we don't need Nittaqueens from down New Orleans? I hate to rain on solo you, but parades need a whole crew. Those Squirtles on St. Charles saw you wandering and withdrew. We don't need Tangulas from Los Angeles. If you're there chasing Charizard, you're making your life way too hard, clutching garlic pounding pavement down Ventura Boulevard. And then, you know, so I feel like that's a kind of a decent verse structure. But we still need to kind of have a core refrain that brings it back to Tennessee. And I've been struggling with that a little bit. I don't have that entirely sorted out. And so I've been kind of just messing with... I've kind of got like a finale. And we're going to have to come back to this because I really want to see this done right in the long term. But right now we're just trying to demonstrate what this space could be used for. And ideally, when we use this space in a real scenario, it would be like me and Cleo and a few other people all yelling over each other. So instead of me having the list of things and like having lyrics prepared, we would all be making it up as we go and scratch papering and editing it out. So finding myself already creating a ludicrously long list of city names that could be mispronounced, it occurred to me that I could also create a list of state names that, you know, work with Pokemon names, like Porygon from Oregon. You know, we could have a Lapras from Texas, or a Pelipper from Mississippi, although I'd really like to stick to Gen 1 as much as possible. But, you know, I was thinking kind of, there's a few things, though, where I could get, like, multiple generations of Pokemon to rhyme with the names of towns. Like, you know, or there's a mountain in Tennessee called Mount Eagle, and, you know, you could do something like, there's enough Weedles on Mount Eagle, you could raise a swarm of Beedrill. There's enough Snubble down in Shubville, you could pull a sled with Grunble. You know, there's stuff there. I kind of had something, too. I was like, you know, Rocky Top is something associated with Tennessee. Rocky Top rhymes with Pokestops, and there are stills on them. So maybe something like, sorry, Professor Oklahoma, we'll raid gyms in Tullahoma. When you're still seeking Pokestops, we'll be spinning them on Rocket Top. And, you know, just, like, I've got all these little fragments. And the question is, how do we get those fragments into a song in this room? And I'm not sure yet, because the books not in Pokemon, the books in Minecraft don't really allow easy editing of earlier parts of the pages at this point. So if we were going to write a book, I realized, you know, I started making a scorecard for the golf club the other day. And I realized I would have to create a new page for each hole if I wanted to be able to start with hole 1. So maybe each verse or each like couplet even is its own page in our musical writing process. Once that lectern comes out with the next update, that might be better. So we'll probably want to establish some sort of lectern adjacent space here. Also, just in terms of like this general appearance, I was kind of thinking, you know, maybe I should put some lapis lazuli the rest of the way through there. That just seems like it's ready for it. But yeah, so we basically break down the threat. We figure out what kind of research we need to respond to the threat. In this case, city names, state names, Pokemon concept names. Then we start creating lyrics, and then we turn it into a song, you know? And we just gotta kind of work on it a little bit from here. I haven't worked all that out yet, but I hope you guys stick around, because in the long term, I think that what we want to be able to do is turn a concept like that into an actual song in relatively short order. But yeah, we're just not there yet. We don't have the freelancers, you know, on call. But we're gonna get there. We're gonna get there. So let's see. This seems like a decent start to the episode. What else do we need here? I feel like really one thing we could have benefited from was having more of these. So after we have the threat board, then we need to probably have the research board, because maybe when we have multiple people here, we would break those down, and we could just use signs for those, I guess. We don't necessarily need to use these and the anvil. I like how big these show up, though. So what it might be is we might have like a list of things for each person to research. So like maybe person 1, what would we call them? Lyricist 1. Lyricist Uno. Songwriter Dos. Musician Trace. And then we could have those kind of come down here. But how are we going to do that if we don't have... If we're just plumb out of cattle? I guess we could go get more cattle and breed them and kill them. It seems kind of like maybe a task for another day. But, you know, thank you guys so much for coming out today and for thinking about this with me, because I feel like there's something here. I feel like we have the ability to take an idea and just run with it. We have the space for it, but we don't necessarily have the tools all created. So any suggestions you guys have about making this space more usable? Let's see. Oh, let's go ahead and actually, we figured out evaluate musical threats was step 1. Step 2, identify research tasks. Step 3. You know what? Actually, one thing that we did that we didn't really make its own step, we didn't identify the through line. Like, one of the through lines of my thing was that we would do the slant rhymes on the Pokemon names when we're talking about Tennessee places, and the slant rhymes on the place names when we're talking about non-Tennessee places, to be more insulting. You know, little through lines like that can make the song, kind of mentally more catchy. We need to identify opening statements. We actually did that earlier here, but in real life, when I was working out how this would go, I wasn't able to figure out how I should attack the opening statements until after I did the research tasks. And I had to make sure that they corresponded with the overall through lines. They need to pull you into the through line, okay? Is this going to flood out if I... Yeah, it's going to flood out. Come on, guys. All I want is a nice place to evaluate musical threats and combat musical threats. It seems like a pretty simple thing. Okay, and how much stuff have we washed away that was vital? Absolutely nothing, it seems. Good. Well, let's put an extra torch here for good luck. I feel luckier already. And ultimately, we need to identify verse structure, really. Like, if we're going to have multiple verses and then a refrain, if we're not going to have a refrain, you know, that needs to be in there too. Like, we just need to work out who's singing even, you know, and that might be part of the verse structure. I don't think we need, like, an identify singers thing on its own. But anyway, some of you guys might be like, Joe, why do you care so much about this stuff? Well, you know, Tennessee is a cultural breadbasket. if bread is music, and if music is food for your soul. So, you know, these things are all important to me. Now, these are not anything I'm pulling from a book, per se. These are things, I mean, because there's real songwriting books out there for real songwriters. But we're not real songwriters. We're real Minecrafters. And we're going to approach this the Minecraft way, which means we're going to establish our own frameworks, ignoring hundreds of thousands of years of customs that people have really put a lot of thought into and researched deeply. And we're just going to go veer in the other direction. Okay. I feel like this is a good space to veer in. If you guys have any strong thoughts about these steps, let me know. And I guess eventually there's a certain point where it's just like write song, but maybe write lyrics. It sounds kind of dumb. Step 7. Hire freelancer or create backing track. Or actually, we probably sing it if we're singing ourselves. There's kind of produce song is kind of its own whole step now that I'm thinking about it, because it's like, am I gonna sing this? Do I send this to somebody else to sing? Do I hire a guitarist? Am I just gonna play it on note blocks? Which, speaking of which, we need to establish an actual note block test space where we can put all the note blocks on different things, and that was one of the things I was going to do this episode. That's why I have so many of these repeaters here and so many of these redstones. Because I was thinking like, oh, it would be cool to actually test, like, what does note block sound like on diorite? I don't know. So we'll put this here. Well, that's a bad place for it. And, because the thing is, if you put, like, a button right next to the note block, you hear the click of the button at the same time as the note block, and it kind of diffuses the sound. So I was like, we should have a whole place full of repeaters next to buttons that slow down the note block. Yeah, see, now, I don't love that. So, in theory, what I actually want to do is set up another one of these. And instead of having a stone block there, we would do something like put a block of gold. Boom. We tried this one earlier, but it's an oldie but goodie. Though the good old days weren't always good, and tomorrow ain't as bad as it seems. See, it's actually, even with that, it's unclicking at the same time as the tone. So really, to make a solid... This is our rapid prototyping space at this point. We're rapidly prototyping songs. We're rapidly prototyping alert systems. I was thinking this alert system should also have a redstone lamp attached to it somehow. Although that would not be a good place for it because that would not show up. But like, what if I guess we could put the redstone lamp here and then put this here. Well, that's still... Okay, you know what? That redstone lamp is not getting power from that. I clearly don't understand how redstone lamps work. Oh, okay, thank you for not breaking. That was almost bad. How far out does this have to be to actually work? Still too close. Okay. We are learning a lot today, guys. Yeah, okay. So basically, we're going to get 1,000,000 repeaters, and we're going to try and put one of every instrument block under a note block somewhere in this space. I'm thinking we're going to have to do it downstairs. Ideally, so if our vault was here, going down here, we would want our note block test area probably out this way into the sea. Oh, but that's going to be its own whole problem. Okay, so we'll have to work that out. So leave comments about all of this. This is all a work in progress, but you know what? That's part of the fun of Hermitcraft is, you know, we make stuff up as we go, or at least I do. Cub fan always knows what he's doing. I'm sure. Watch this. What are you doing, Cub? Lag busting. Awesome. Thanks. Okay, well, Cub is in the process of lag busting, which is a very sophisticated thing to do that requires a lot of pre-planning. Doc M is printing diamonds, even though no one asked him. So, as you noticed, I'm the only one here who doesn't know what he's doing. Feel free to leave a comment in the YouTube comments section below to help me out. Well, until next time, y'all, this is Joe Hills from Nashville, Tennessee. Keep adventuring.